Hi guys, and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be looking at the WZ-111 Alpine Tiger, or well, the Alpine Tiger WZ-111. And I've got to say, in my opinion, I personally think this is possibly the best looking premium tank that we've ever had in World of Tanks. Some people think it's quite plain because it's just that sort of plain silvery grey metal colour. But I really like it. I like the fact that they've left it like that and just used the different shades of silver, and I really like the fact that they've actually done the design in relief, as though it's been sort of carved or embossed into the turret. And well, not embossed, but it is in relief. But yeah, I really do like this tank. They've done a very, very good job on it. Really well done, and especially with, let's face it, some of the dodgy looking sort of skins and reskins that we've had recently. This is a very, very nice looking tank. Now, having said that, it's not without its issues. The looks are one thing, but how does it actually perform? It could be the best looking tank in the world, but if it performs like a pile of crap, then it's just eye candy. And to be honest, it performs quite well. It's essentially, I mean, as you can probably tell with the designation WZ-111, it's hull and turret wise, it is essentially the WZ-111 Model 1.4, the tier 9 Chinese heavy, but a tier lower, tier 8. However, don't get too excited because the gun is something, completely different. But to compensate for that gun, it does get preferential matchmaking, which is something that we've not seen much of recently. In fact, I was trying to think, and I can't remember the last new release premium that actually had preferential matchmaking. They sort of seem to have moved away from that and given things, full matchmaking. Especially, I mean, look at the King Dragon Type 59, for instance. The original Type 59 has preferential matchmaking. That version did not, so it is kind of unusual. And in a way, you see, the preferential matchmaking doesn't bother me. Sometimes it doesn't. A tank, if you think a premium tank really does need it, that it is really underperforming, then that's one thing. But personally, the preferential matchmaking and stuff is not a deal breaker for me. But it kind of is nice because it means that you're not going to be. You can, if you're just fed up with being bottom tier, you can jump in a tank and it's not going to be bottom tier. At the very worst, you're going to be sort of mid tier, so not too bad. But yeah, the gun. Well, let's get on to sort of going on about it. Like I said before, essentially the hull and turret are the same, exactly the same armor profile, everything for the hull and the turret as the tier 9. Same engine size as well. Not quite as good terrain resistance, and it does have slightly less hull traverse, but only by 2 degrees, but it's understandable, it's a tier lower. However, it is more mobile than the 112, and the reason I've got this here is because it essentially uses the same gun, but the Alpine Tiger has a few improvements on the soft stats, but unfortunately not the pen. But it does kind of feel like it makes the 112 obsolete, especially without having the better soft stats on the gun. And personally, I think possibly a better hull as well, and it is a bit more mobile on top of that. And I can't remember what the traverse is on this. Oh, same traverses, same view range as the 112, which is 2626 and 380. Although, having said that, looking at it, the Alpine Tiger does have 10mm less armour on the front and side of the turret as well. But to be honest, I've not noticed it suffer for that at all. So let's get into the stats and actually sort of have a look at some of those. So you get a 600 horsepower engine, same size as the WZ-111-14, a little bit bigger than the 112. And like I said, I do feel that this makes the 112 obsolete. This is more expensive, obviously. It's a hero tank version. I'm assuming we're going to get a plain version of this at some point. A clean version, as they like to call it. At some point, I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm assuming we are. But I must admit, I kind of want this in my garage, if only just to look at it. It is really, really good job on the design, guys. Really good. And I know it sounds like I'm gushing a little bit, but it's just, I think it's made even more pleasant because we've had some sort of dodgy skins and reskins recently. Anyway, 122mm D25TA. Yeah, some of you are thinking, what, 122mm D25T? I know that designation. Yes, you will. It's the gun that's basically on a lot of Russian heavies. It's usually the stock gun on some of the Russian heavies, including some of the higher tier ones, which is horrific. For instance, the STI has that as a stock, has a D25T as a stock gun, which is just insanely bad on a tier 9. It really is. But this isn't a tier 9, it's tier 8 with preferential matchmaking, so it only sees up to tier 9. But you get a rate of fire of 4.8 rounds a minute, which is slightly faster than on the 112, and I'm comparing it to that because it's the closest comparison, and it's another Chinese tier 8 premium heavy with preferential matchmaking and essentially the same gun. But yeah, 4.8 on this, 4.55 on the 112. 175 pen, 390 damage, very standard for that gun. It's the same damage across the board, whatever uses this gun generally. 250 for your premium rounds, which are heat for this, and again 390, 61, 530 for your HE. Aiming time is 3 seconds, which is, well, 0.4 quicker than the 112, which is, it's still a bad aim time, don't get me wrong, the aim time is awful on this, but it's quite a significant difference between 3 and 3.4 when you're talking about an aim time. It doesn't sound a lot, but when you're aiming, it does make a difference. But it is still a bit of a poor aim time, let's be honest. And accuracy 0.44, again, pretty poor, pretty average for a Russian sort of gun. I know this is a Chinese vehicle, but essentially I think they were using sort of Russian guns or plans for them at the time. Again, could be wrong on that one. It's just I'm trying to remember back. But yeah, the accuracy is pretty poor at 0.44, but again, it's better than 0.47, which is what the 112 has. So, like I say, I know this is more expensive, and price, to me the price does not affect a tank's performance, whether you agree with the price or not. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, sometimes I just think, well, whatever, it is what it is. But the price doesn't affect the tank's performance, and I don't think the tank's performance should reflect in the price either. But yeah, this obviously is more expensive, it being a hero tank version. I think it's around 15,000 gold or just over at the moment for the most expensive bundle. However, if you are getting both, if you get them in the bundle together, I think it does bring the price down quite a bit on both of them. So it is expensive though to look at that bundle. It's one that I'd like to add, but yeah, it's a lot. Anyway, back to the Traverse. 26 on the hull, 2 degrees less than the tier 9 version, same as the 112. And 26 on the turret, again, that is the same as the tier 9 version and is the same as the 112. And 380 meter view range, 20 meters less than the tier 9, same as the 112. And a 600 meter radio range, which is the same as the 112 as well. Equipment wise, well, I've gone for a vertical stabilizer, a gun rammer and coated optics. After playing it a little bit, I'm not sure if that's quite the right setup, and some of the other tanks that I've got that are similar to this and with that similar sort of long game time, I've actually put coated optics and gun lane drive, both of them on there, not coated optics, vertical stabilizer and a gun lane drive on it. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but it's sort of, the vertical stabilizer works for when you're moving or when your turret is turning, and the gun lane drive is for when you're still. When you're not moving your turret, you're not moving the tank. So both together, it does help, especially when you're coming to a rest. When you've moved and you stop and you're taking aim. Both of them do help there, I find. Other people may think differently, but that's what I find. So yeah, not sure if it's quite the right equipment setup, but I've done alright with it. And I've got a decent match to follow with an ace, and I've got a more sort of average match to show you some of the weaknesses of this gun as well. Consumables, I've just put the your standard consumables on there. Price wise, well, it's a 122mm gun, and your heat are a little bit more expensive. Normally, I think if you have like APCR, generally on a 122mm, you're looking about 4,800 ish on average for your shells. This is 5,600 for the heat, 1,025 for your standard rounds, which is again standard for this sort of caliber gun, and 608 for your high explosive. I only carry 10 heat in it. That's been enough so far, and you will have to fire heat in this tank. Not all the time. You don't have to fire heat all the time, but you will have to fire some, even in tier 8 matches. There are tanks that you just simply cannot pen from the front, either because you don't have enough pen, or you just don't quite have the accuracy to reliably aim for those weak spots. So you are going to have to fall back on your heat. But I've found so far that 10 is enough. You might find differently. It depends on what the matches you get into. I was in one tier 9 match in this today, and I did awful. And I didn't even see a tier 9. In fact, no, I did, sorry. I saw a T54 lightweight as it was circling me with a T71 and just destroyed me. So, yeah. But other than that, I've not really seen any tier 9s to shoot at. However, the Oho, I just couldn't get through the front of it. Could not. And even aiming for sort of weaker spots on the front, just simply couldn't pen it and had to switch to my heat. And even then, it was showing as a 50-50 pen, but they did go through. But just to give you an example. So yeah, equipment-wise, like I say, I don't know. Skill-wise, well, to be honest, the WZ-111-14 is very, very similar to the Russian T10, and kind of understandable, kind of based off it. But I've always found that the, and again, people might disagree, I've just found that the WZ-111-14, the hull shape is slightly different at the front, as you can see there, and it is slightly different shape to the T10, and I've always found that the hull front on this has always been a bit more reliable at bouncing than on the T10. The T10, I find that you should play it a bit more like a medium, and although, you know, there is some stuff that can bounce off the front of it, generally the sort of lower tiers, you do have to be a bit more careful than you would in something, say, like the IS-3, or especially the Defender. And I've just, personally, I feel that the front of this is a little more bouncy than the front of the T10. You've still got spaced armour down the sides, but we'll look at that in a moment. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, bonuses. There we go, bonuses. 57% silver bonus, which is a bit higher, actually, for a tier 8. They're normally around 50-55, so yeah, slightly on the higher side. And a 15% XP bonus as well. Now, engine-wise, 600 horsepower, like I say, translates to a 13.48 horsepower per tonne power-to-weight ratio, which isn't bad. It doesn't quite feel as mobile as the T10, but I've not been in a T10 for a while. Definitely feels more mobile than the 112, which it is. Marginally less mobile than the Tier 9, because that has 2 degrees extra hull traverse and slightly better terrain resistances. But you still get a decent forward top speed of 50 km an hour, and it's no slouch, this, don't get me wrong. You know, it is a mobile heavy. It's not like your big, slow, lumbering heavies like your STI, etc. You know, it is a fairly mobile heavy. 15 in reverse and a very low 12% chance of fire, although it is a rather large engine that takes up most of the space behind the turret towards the back of the tank. Gun-wise, well, yeah, accuracy on move 0.64. Yeah, we're getting into KV2 territory up here. Accuracy on rotating turret 0.82, and accuracy at 100 meters 0.44, which again is pretty poor, let's face it, but it's better than the 112s. 23 degrees of elevation, which is really nice. You know, most tanks, the highest you get, there are a couple of examples that go higher, but most it's like 25 is sort of generally the higher you get. So 23, yeah, more than enough. If anything gets above you, not a problem. Typical in Chinese fashion, though, appalling gun depression at only 5 degrees or minus 5 degrees. So yeah, it does sort of follow the Chinese line with that. So it does affect anybody who's familiar with the Chinese tanks. You know, you've got to really plan where you're actually going to put your tank because of that poor gun depression. Concealment isn't great either, but it's not too savage really for a sort of a heavy. 0.14 on the move and 0.08 while stationary. No, other way around. Yeah. Tracks, terrain resistances 1, 1.2 and 2.2, which are almost the same as the 112, apart from that is 1, 1.1 and 2.3, and they are slightly worse than the tier 9 heavy, but again, it's a tier lower, it's kind of understandable. Turret on top. Radio is in the very left hand side of the turret, just under the commander's hatch. Ammunition blocks around the sides of the turret, as you can see there, so yeah, if you get one of these at the side, try and put it through the side of the turret or the side of the hull, almost again taking up the entire space or the entire length of the turret, but in the hull. So if you get a good shot through the tracks, anywhere through that gap in the tracks below the turret, and you're probably going to get you've got a good chance of hitting the ammo rack. Try not to go for the hull sides above the tracks, though. There is spaced armor there. It does eat shots. I've had it eat shots for me, so yeah, try and go for that gap in between the tracks. Oh, and also shell velocity, which I've been forgetting recently, and I kept meaning to do it. 800 meters a second on your standard rounds, which isn't great, to be honest, for a tier 8. That's a little on the slow side, it has to be said. And your heat at 640 meters a second, yeah, you do have to lead those a bit more. And again, that is that does seem unusually slow, actually, for shell velocity. So, yeah, that does seem quite slow. Wrong button. Crew members, you've got the driver down in the centre of the hull, same as on the Tier 9, same as on the T10, and then up in the turret you've got the gunner, loader and commander. I'm assuming the commander will double up as a radio operator as well. Armour-wise, yeah, it's pretty nicely armoured, to be honest. But you've got 120 on the front of the hull, 120 on the sides of the hull, because I think it did receive a buff a couple of updates ago to the hull sides, if I remember rightly. I don't think it was quite 120 before. And 60 on the rear. And your turret is 230 on the front, 120 on the sides, and 60 on the rear. And as you can see, it's quite a nice, tough turret. You don't have that weak spot patch behind the gun mantle like IS-3s do. But yeah, it's quite a bouncy turret. And even though the commander's hatches do look fairly prominent, they are quite tricky to hit. So, you know, you can go for them if that's all you've got, but they just seem to be irritating to hit. And if you're in one of these and somebody's going for your commander's hatches, you know, usual, rock. You know, like you're going crazy in the corner, rock backwards and forwards, and hopefully it should try and throw your aim off. But do it. Actually move a little bit. I had somebody rocking backwards, in fact you'll show them later, and they just weren't moving quite enough, and it just allowed me to get easy shots at their commander's hatch. Not in one of these, in something else. But anyway. 1 to 20 are your, what I can see, tracks, which we like to space armour, don't forget, in the whole floor, and just the underside. No, that's it really. 21 to 30 is your top deck, covering your engine deck. The spaced armour down the sides, as you can see there, those sort of wedge-shaped bits, they are spaced armour on the sides. They are quite nice for eating shots, normally when you least expect it, and normally to your great pleasure, because it means you've survived. 31 to 50 is just a strip around the gun mantle and the gun itself. 51 to 70, the top rear part of the turret, top of the commander's hatches, a small section on the rear of the turret and the whole back end of the tank, the whole arse of it. 71 to 90, well, they are your hull sides below your tracks and that sloped part behind the spaced armour, but it is very, very well angled, and generally if anything goes into your spaced armour, a lot of the time, not all the time, a lot of the time it generally either gets eaten or just sort of gets negated in that respect, which is what I like about these. Right, 91 to 120, and my voice is starting to go. I feel tickling in my throat again. Just got rid of a cold, and then somebody came that we know, and they had a different cold, which they've passed on. Lovely. The thin strips above the spaced armour on the side of the tank and the hull front, which is your 120, the rest of the hull top and sides sort of all just fall into that bracket. It's not really much of a patchwork until you get a bit further forwards. 121 to 160, your hatches, so they are quite tough. 161 to 190, and I think the only place I can see is that thin strip just on that, well, I'm assuming it's not the commander's hatch, it's the other hatch, whatever, hatch, yeah, it's a hatch. 191 to 230, front of the turret, it does show as 230, you know, that's it, how it's supposed to be. There is that part behind the gun mantle as well, so it's sort of layered, the gun mantle is over more armour, but it is just standard. Like I say, some of these tanks are quite patchwork on the turret, this is not. And then you have 250mm it's showing as, because it, you know, it says it goes to 250, which is your gun mantle itself, and don't forget you've got like 230 behind there as well, so a very tough gun mantle. Tough turret in general, and a tough hull as well, especially when facing a lot of same tier, not all, but a lot of same tier vehicles, and especially below as well. But anyway, I've gone on quite long enough about this, let's get into the replays and see how it handles. Right, so here we are for the first of the replays, Tier 8 match on Preferential Capital, is it? Paris. You know, that's what it is, essentially. But anyway, and this is, I'd say this is possibly more of an average match that I've been having in this today. The next one is a particularly good match, or, you know, it was for this tank, it was quite a nice match, high damage and what, you know, highish damage, and hopefully this one may show you some of the downsides of the gun, and I mean that's it basically, it's the gun. And like I said in the garage, you are going to have to fire some heat in this, even in Tier 8 matches, especially in Tier 9. So I'd probably start with 10 personally and see how you go. And if you realise that you're going to need more, especially for tier 9 matches, stick a few more in. But you don't need to fire just heat out of this. I don't think at all. And while I'm just sort of on my way to whatever, that one bounced. Thank you for your nice comment, for what you said. And you also asked me how long it takes me to do these videos, to put them together. And it's very dependent on the video. In fact, there's the enemy Alpine Tiger. Knocked his tracks off. In fact, I don't even think that went where I aimed it. So yeah, it's dependent on the video. Not including getting the actual gameplay footage, but obviously including doing the garage review or whatever. Depending on the video, it's anywhere from maybe half an hour to 45 minutes of sort of commentating, editing and processing, and that's where I managed to get it down to. It used to take me longer, but now it's, yeah, I'd say about half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on the video. Obviously, if you include getting footage in there, it's going to be a lot longer. You know, you're talking hours and hours. And also, I do try and, before I do a garage review, I do try and compare the tank, or try and find its closest comparison. If it's a premium tank, try and find the closest comparison and just check up on a few of the details and a few figures and things from various other tanks just to compare it to. But yeah, it used to take me a lot longer, but it is, like I say, dependent on the video, and processing used to take longer as well. But I was recording in 60 frames a second, which was a bit overkill because, well, the tank only goes up to 30, so I've cut that down, and it's basically cut the processing time in half. Now this match wasn't great. Managed to do damage to basically everything I sort of came across almost, and it was just the fact that I didn't really come across much. I came out to the field, as you can see on here, or the square, whatever you want to call it, and not really many other people did, and I was very surprised that I one-shot him, but then I realised that I think it was the tier 5 version, and I thought, what the hell's he doing in a tier 8? But he must have been platooned up. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to have this T21. And he sensed it as well, and he tried to get past me. I probably should have kept moving forwards to block him in, but as it turns out, it wasn't too bad, because I really did give him a smack with that one. And it, you know, it's a high alpha damage gun for its tier. Well, I say high alpha damage, it's one of the higher alphas. There's a lot of stuff with sort of 390 damage down here, especially you know, your Russians. But it does give the lower tiers a nice smack and makes them think twice, which is quite funny. But it's the gun, like I say. It's anemic pen on that, you know, 175mm of pen. It's just not quite enough, even in tier 8 matches. And anybody who's been through the IS, you know, when you're having to go into tier 8, will realise that 175 pen can be a bit of a liability in these matches. And as you know, you saw, I had to when I can talk again, I had to resort to firing heat at the enemy Alpine Tiger as well. And now it's back down the other end to try and deal with that Motherland, who's somehow managed to get around that way. Luckily, not many of the enemy team decided to come out this way either. I say luckily, it meant that I didn't really get much damage done in this match, and I've actually got a couple of screenshots after this game, which from another game that I did, and it's a very similar sort of damage output from myself, a lot more blocked in that one, but a very similar damage output from myself. And in that match, it was down to the gun depression. It was on Sand River, and it was down to gun depression, not being able to get the gun down occasionally, and not really wanting to pop up over where I was because I just would have got slaughtered. And it was also the accuracy came into play. So I was, you know, the stuff that I did shoot at either missed it or it bounced. So, you know, I had to resort to using a few heat again in that one. Not many, but a couple. But yeah, it's tricky to aim for weak spots because the accuracy is quite poor. Although, at the back of that Centurion, I didn't need to put a heat at him. However, it's what was loaded. I'd loaded up heat to deal with this Motherland. I thought if I'm going to have to deal with him from the front, I want to make sure that I pen him, because if not, I don't want to get him too close. because I don't really have particularly good gun depression. So, you know, it's a fairly low profile tank, the Motherland. So is this, but I just didn't want to take the risk, and unfortunately my first one went into his tracks. I'm aiming this one a bit better. You sneaky bugger. He's just tracked me. And, oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, smile, Liam. You're famous. Yeah, somebody, Liam, was messaging me earlier. And he's also got a YouTube channel as well, which would be worth checking out. And I'm going to go and have a look at that in a bit for you, Liam, when I've got a bit of free time. Although, unfortunately, I don't have the name of his YouTube channel to hand, which is pretty crap, isn't it, of me? So I apologise for that. But I'll try and put a couple of his clips in the guest showcase, which I've not really been doing much of recently. Now, there's nothing left apart from the Bulldog. I'm not going to get any more damage done. I managed to do 7, got 4 kills. Don't really feel like I've done a particularly large amount in this match, and in fact it turns out I haven't. But that was just because of the way that I went. This match wasn't down to particularly accuracy or penetration on this gun or lack thereof. It was just down to the way that I went. But it kind of did, I think, highlight, hopefully, some of the weaknesses of the gun. And that's it, that's the match. So there you go, not too bad. Not great though, kind of average. In fact, pretty poor to be honest, damage-wise. But that's sort of some of the bit more of an average match that I've been having in it. I've done damage a bit higher than that. I've not really done anything particularly lower than that. Oh no, I have 1500 I think, which is in the screenshots you'll get in a moment. But yeah, like I said, I know I said, you know, you don't have to fire just heat out of this, you will have to fire some heat, but you've really got to think about what you're going to fire it at. And it's kind of one of those tanks that you need to know what you can pen and what you can't with that 175. As you saw there, you know, 3,500 blocked. It was a good amount of blocked, but not a particularly good amount of damage. And as I said, that one, the screenshots that you saw, that was down to accuracy and lack of pen that I did lower damage. So back to this one. Redshirt, tier 8 again. It's what you'll see most of in this with having preferential matchmaking. And this is a better match that kind of shows you what it can do, especially if you're a bit keener on which ammunition to use, which I suppose in the Sand River one I was being a bit cautious with it, not really wanting to fire some of the heat. But then again, the stuff I was against, there was a T28 prototype and I was just couldn't get him to show himself, couldn't hit his commander's hatches, and just couldn't get him to show himself over. And I was trying to save the heat a little bit for that in case I needed to try and get through the front of it, and that was the only opportunity I had. So yeah, you know, possibly down to me a little bit in that match as well. I can't blame it all on the tank. Now I'm coming down to I suppose heavy tank alley in a way. You normally get quite a few heavy tanks coming this way. I am managing to pull away from the other tanks that are coming over here with me. As you can see, it's, you know, it's mobile enough for a heavy. And well, not many of the enemy tanks come this way. Not really any enemy heavies come this way or anything like that. But I suppose a quick roundup of this tank is that it's got pretty decent armour. It's got good mobility, but just a bit of a crappy gun, to be honest. But you can make it work. Like I say, without firing nothing but heat, but you are going to have to fire. And I know I keep saying it, repeating myself, you are going to have to fire some. I know there's some people out there that don't like to use the premium ammo as much, and I try not to use it as much, although there are certain tanks now that I am using it more. You know, instead of just punishing myself, it's like, you know, if I need to use it, use it. I don't know why I just seem to refuse to before. You never really saw me switching ammo at all. Now I got through the side of that IS-3 with the standard rounds. It bounced off at the front row. It was a bit of a dodgy angle. Took a bounce there from the HWK. And yeah, he makes his presence known to me a couple of times throughout the match. But what we've also got over here is a VK100-01P. Yep. I'm switching to heat because I know that I will not be able to pen that guy frontally with 175mm pen. or if I do, it's going to be a very, very lucky shot. Even the front of the commander's hatch on those things is bloody tough. And the heat on here has got 250mm of pen, and it was still only showing as 50-50. Luckily, it went through. And that's what I was saying about earlier with the rocking backwards and forwards. You've got to make sure you move enough, because as you can see, he is rocking backwards and forwards. It's just not quite moving it enough. And I've just, you know, I'm not even following him. I'm just waiting for him to pop back into that position. Try and make it random as well if you can. That sounds daft, but, you know, not just forwards, backwards, but, you know, maybe forwards, backwards, backwards, that sort of thing. And it sounds like I'm giving out old cheats for the Mega Drive. Or as you guys across the pond would know, it is the Sega Genesis, I believe it was called in the States. Yeah, had enough. Wanted to get in there a little bit, fed up trying to hit his commander's hatch, decided to just try and get in. I know that he can pen the front of me because he has done a couple of times, and he did again. But I was just hoping that I might be able to take him down, or at least me and the allies that are with me might be able to take him down before I take too much damage. Take another hit though, unfortunately. I was a bit not quite on the ball with keeping up with his movement as he pulled back there. Got one into his side again. Probably didn't need the heat to get it into his side, but it was loaded, so I used it. As opposed to, you know, having to wait for another reload and possibly missing the shot, taking another hit. Same with the T-29. Did not need to use heat on the front of him, but it was loaded. So I either use it and get the shot, or I reload and probably miss the shot. But as soon as I fired it, reloaded my standard rounds, because I knew I could deal with him with the standard rounds. Now we've got an IS-3 up there though, and a T-28 prototype. And that was quite a nice shot, even if I do say so myself. It was nice that it went in, because it's not the most accurate, so it is nice when you've got a sort of fairly inaccurate gun and it does go where you want it to. And again, use my standard rounds. T-28 prototype though, yeah, he's going to be a different matter, and I've swapped over to heat. And now he's pulled back that prototype. That's when I decided to make a rush across there. It's a, I don't know if it's a Charioteer or a Challenger. I think it might be a Challenger. You do take a hit from that HWK-12, the Hawk 12. It does manage to hit me, so that's why I pulled back and angled a bit. Waited for him to sort of drop down and break his line of sight with me. And again, did not need the heat to deal with that TD, but it was loaded, so I either took the shot and used it, or well, reloaded and probably missed the shot. But I'm on low health now. There's definitely somebody who wants to take me down. A couple of shots coming in over my head there. And now try and get to this T-28 prototype, but I've got to be cautious because, as I said, very typically Chinese gun depression. Very poor gun depression. So I'll come up and over behind the building. I'm just waiting because that light tank's going to make a move. And again, I'm spotted. I'm assuming it was the T-28 prototype, as it was just peeking up over that ridge. But I'm not taking any chances and go back around the other side of the house at him instead. Still got my heat loaded again. It was more of a precaution against the T-28 prototype. Turns out I didn't need it because I had his side, but again I've just swapped back to my standard rounds as soon as I could. Which again is enough to deal with a Tiger and whatever's left on the battlefield, I would imagine. So I have had to use 8 heat rounds in this match, and to be honest, I think that's probably more shots than I've actually fired standard rounds. So, yeah, I don't know. 10 could possibly be enough. I still stand by what I said earlier. I've said it a couple of times, that you don't need to fire just heat out of this. And that was, yeah, that shot surprised me. I took a risk, not fully aimed, and it actually hit him. So yeah, pleasantly surprised by that. But yeah, you don't need to fire just heat, but you are going to have to fire a fair few against certain tanks. And that's the thing, it's just knowing what tanks you're going to have to fire it against, and if you see them coming towards you or you're going towards them, preloading the correct ammunition, which is, I suppose it's the key in some tanks. It's not as important in other tanks that have sort of got enough pen for the tier or whatever to deal with it, but like I say, tier for tier, this is pretty low pen. And that, I think that is my only gripe with this tank, with its performance, is its gun performance. And it's not too bad when you get close, but obviously if you get close to taller vehicles, they can shoot down into your top. So it sort of, you know, swings and roundabouts. But quite a nice game, nice amount of credits in, 4,500 damage, 3,200 blocked and 1,200 assisted. So yeah, very happy with that game. And that was actually my first game today, so it was a lovely start to the day, and it all went downhill after that, which it normally does. But yeah, that's, you know, that's the sort of other end of the scale. The first one I showed you was a more average game that I've been having in it. I'll probably get, you know, better games than that. My average will go up in it, but that's what I've been having at the moment. And mostly it's just down to accuracy and penetration on the gun, and that's all I can say about it, is that, you know, as I said before, decent armour, good mobility, just a bit of a poor gun, that's all, unfortunately. But there you go. Hope you've enjoyed that anyway. We're back tomorrow with another video for you, so until then, take care of then. I'll catch you next time. See you later.